8:07 the time. 41 degrees, AM 650, KGAB Radio. My name is Glenn Woods. Thanks for joining me. All right, you'll want to get ready with your phones, but first let us spend a little bit of time doing the setup here. So you've heard by now, I assume, of the Lynn Hutchings controversy, and this all started when our state senator, Lynn Hutchings, was making a comparison, or not a comparison, wait, let's be careful, was using an example to make a point, and it was thought of as a comparison by the group Wyoming Equality. And so they accused her of saying some horrible things. And did they ask for her resignation over this? I think they did. They did. Okay. Mr. Hutchings in the studio with me, who is here to defend her because you two, I've been calling you two a team.
Yep, we are.
I've met you two on and off over the years over there, and I always thought that it's really just a good team the way you help each other out. You've been her campaign manager.
Exactly.
So she's busy today. She's doing legislative work right now, so that's why you're here to defend her. Let's take a look first off, and I've been making this point all week long, at what exactly it is that she said and why it is an example used during a discussion and not a comparison, because I think people need to understand the difference.
Right. Well, you have to go back and look at the bill. The bill was HB 230, and in the bill they were trying to insert gender identity and sexual orientation, but the terms were not defined, so it was just there. And like gender identities, some places say that there are 112 gender identities. Right. You have the orientation, LGBT, QIA
they need
plus.
They need an acronym for
exactly.
that. I can't do all that.
So during the committee meeting, which I was there and I testified, and a few other legislators testified, that was pretty much the meat of the controversy there. These terms and that they were not defined.
Didn't somebody ask during the course of the hearings, can you define?
Yes.
Okay.
The sponsor of the bill, who is also the chairman of that committee, was asked that question, and he said, well, that's hard to nail down. Another sponsor of the bill, Title Representative Lindholm, was asked the question, and he just squirmed in his chair and kind of hemmed and hawed, so he couldn't answer it. Also, they asked Department of Workforce Services, well, what would you do if somebody was charged based on this bill of violating it? And she sat there and thought for a minute and said, we have to go ask the Department of Labor. Mm-hmm. So you have this set up and these questions, and everyone's asking questions about what if, the same kind of questions. So when these students came down, and the students, this Gay Straight Alliance was created by Wyoming Equality. The executive director is Sarah Burlingame. Mm-hmm. Sarah Burlingame is also the co-sponsor of the bill, right. And she was also sitting on that committee, right. So she had a vote on that too. So when they came down and pulled Lynn out, there was no scheduled meeting. There are false stories in the media about, oh, there was a meeting and there was a conference set up. That's not true. She was in the Senate. During session, they sent a note in. She came out to see what they wanted. And where they stood was right in earshot, just feet away from the sergeant at arms. And also where they were talking, that's where the lobbyists hang out, waiting for the legislators to come in and out. So there are usually about 5 lobbyists standing there too. One week I spent 20 hours down there. So the place is an old Walmart with carpeting, and people just kind of hang out. It's almost like a bus station or an airport or something. So when they go there, they went down there. Remember, they've been trained. This is Wyoming Equality is a lobbyist group. It's an activist group. They've gotten into the schools with this. They are training activists, and then they go down there. They bring this topic in. They bring the subject up. So then Lynn starts asking them questions. What if? Yeah, she did say, what if, someone's sexual orientation was to engage with a group of men or a group of women or animals. There are people out there that are like that. They're in the news already. So she didn't say anything about religion. She didn't talk about God. I mean, it made it sound as though she was spitting blood and screaming and all of that. It's amazing the stuff that we've been getting back on our phones and they've been writing in the paper. All that's not true. It's an outright lie.
When I took a look at the press release from Wyoming Equality, and I took a look at the words there, okay, is that accurate as far as a quote goes as to what she said? I mean, was that like a recording, a transcript, or is just what they thought she said?
I don't have the thing in front of me, so I can't really say. But I don't want to say because, like I said, I really haven't looked at I just kind of looked at it real quick. Okay. So I can't really say based on that. But what I said is what she said, and she asked questions. And for these kids students to come in and say that in the Wyoming Equality to say that these kids are fragile, they're tender-hearted, their minds are developing, and they're suicidal. And these are their words. And these are words from people that keep calling. They're suicidal. They were accompanied by the psych ed sponsor. That's who brought them there. So why would they come down there to lobby on a topic of sex? This is the Gay-Straight Alliance, and then they complain. It's like me going to an air show to see the Thunderbirds, and then I'm offended by all the airplanes there. Yeah. It just doesn't make sense.
If they're that fragile, why did you bring them?
Exactly. So that's, they're complicit in this. Right. I mean, that was the sole purpose they brought them down there. And they're using these kids as human shields because then if you say, question anything that went on, now you're bashing the kids. When Lynn came out and said, if any words to that effect that said, I said this kind of stuff, that's a lie. Now people are saying, oh, you're calling the kids liars. So, the students liars, because to start off with, Wyoming Equality said they were 14 years old. They weren't 14 years old because Lynn said, how old are you guys when she first got there? And they were from 16, 18. I think she said there may have been some even older than that.
Okay, so let's take a look at, again, she's using what I do every single day here. She's laying out examples and what ifs to go ahead and get a discussion going. Did she get a discussion going with the kids? Was there a back and forth there between them?
There was. And some of them were laughing and stuff because when she brought up those questions, some of them even said, like the act, or like what if someone had a sexual orientation where they were attracted to I can't remember what she said, kids or whatever, and there are people that are like that, so that would be covered under that bill. And then they said that was inappropriate. Okay, you're thinking that was inappropriate in that sexual orientation would be, so that's something we don't want to have in there. So, and there were questions that went back and forth and back and forth. So it wasn't like she stood there and went and was ranting and raving and that kind of thing.
So it sounds like, based on, first of all, the press release you put out and what you're saying here, what she's trying to say then is that the language of the bill is too vague and we need to tighten up the language if we're going to do this.
Exactly. It was vague and it was morphing all the time. I'm not sure if I mentioned it, but there were 112 gender identities. The sponsor of the bill, the co-sponsors of the bill, they can't even define it. So, and these trained students, like I said, by Wyoming Equality, were sent down there to do this. And the bill had just come out of the committee because I was in the committee, and it was fresh out of committee. I was still down there when Lynn spoke to these students. And why didn't they go to the House? They even acknowledged in one of the articles, they said they knew she was against it. So why go to Lynn about this? Why didn't you go to the House? The bill never even made it out of the House. Why were they even going to talk to Lynn? So it was just a setup. That was their purpose.
Well, and then, of course, there's the reaction that you got and some of the things that you brought me here, which I'd like to take a look at next. It's AM 650, KGAB Radio.
Some time in the conservative underground with Sean Hannity, weekdays at 1 and Sunday mornings at 8 on AM 650, KGAB, and KGAB.com.
8:19 is the time, 41 degrees, wind still at 24 miles now. Well, now 123 miles an hour. That's a little bit better anyway. My name is Lynn Woods. Thanks for joining me, Mr. Hutchings, in the studio with me. And just so you know, I keep calling you that because my mom was very well known in my hometown. And so my father was known as Rosalie's husband. And that was just the reputation that he had. And we were all Rosalie's kids. So you are Lynn Hutchings' husband, as far as I'm concerned. She's reached that status in the state. That's just going to have to be your title.
My mom called me Mr. Lynn.
Mr. Lynn? Yeah, I can believe it. Okay, so as soon as the controversy that was, I'm going to say that, my words, stirred up by Wyoming equality hit the papers. And, of course, the media needs something to run with. So, of course, it goes across all the newspapers and television stations and so on. And we ran it here as well. So we have to have our controversy. Your phones start to ring. Now, I would assume that everybody who's calling you, they're, of course, very tolerant and understanding people who want to have a level-headed conversation with you, right?
Not quite.
Okay. What happened?
Just some of the, well, I can't even repeat what's said on there. You know, you have the transcripts and you have a recording there. Every kind of word you can imagine. And this happened years ago.
Yeah.
And that's one reason why Wyoming equality has really lost credibility, because now it's just an attack machine. And they've done this before. And, you know, through conversations at the city council, Representative Burlingame knew this type of stuff happens, and still they sick the dogs out on us again, and just the most vile messages. And, you know, to hear your wife being called all these kind of names is, after a while, you just kind of, I guess, never get used to it, but you just kind of expect that type of stuff. And Wyoming Equality has been doing this for a while. They've been bullying other legislators, you know, at the legislature, and Sarah Burlingame has been there with kids bullying the legislators. So that's what she does with the GSA kids.
Okay, and to give an example of that, you brought this in yesterday. I had to bleep out a lot of it, so you're not going to get the words that, well, because of the FCC, we can't say this stuff.
Yeah, you homophobic. Just imagine if people called you, like, I don't know, a raghead. What if people thought you should be a slave, such as our first 12 presidents of the United States thought you would be a slave?
Just so you know, those last three beeps are legit. I couldn't play that on the air, but the last three bleeps are, and the kinds of things that they call her, not just referring to race, but everything from sexuality and body parts and so on. And you've got like stacks of this stuff. Yeah. Is your email box full?
Not the phone. We have to empty the phone, the message every day. And they've been putting this stuff on like 3 different things. They've attacked the Facebook accounts. Right. They've done everything they could. And a question I have, not a comparison, excuse me. Do the parents, Laramie County School District, and the Superintendent of Public Instruction know that these kids are being used for this? And if they do they think this is okay? And what was funny not funny, but after that event at the legislature, we didn't have any parents calling us. If somebody had insulted my kids to that degree, I would have called that legislator up. No one did. No one even called us. I think maybe one person may have called or emailed and asked, claiming to be a parent later on the next week. And this is after all the news stories broke. So that was the deal on that. But what was disappointing was that Sarah Burlingame at no time, Representative Burlingame, never contacted Representative Hutchings, never asked her, hey, is this true? She's right there. She has a phone number. She's even been to our church before. Instead, this was just taken and blown way out of proportion.
Well, again, right there, she passes her in the hallway, I would assume, on that time. So
sees her every day. And there was just no attempt to try to find anything out. It was just immediate dragging through the mud. You have people that represent the city here that went on the attack, and just based on allegations. So all of this stuff is based on allegations. And I guess the media thinks they're saving themselves by just throwing in allegations, but then they plaster her face on the paper every day. And years ago, I don't know what it is. I guess it's because she's this oddity of being a black Republican, or especially a female and conservative. But last time she ran for office back in 2014, we forgot, or at least I was responsible for this, forgot to put paid for by Hutchings for Senate and on a mailer.
Right.
And the paper found that out. They waited to just a few days before the election, plastered her face on the front page of the paper and said she might be guilty of a crime. Now, according to the Secretary of State, a lot of people forget that. It's like, oh well, no big deal. You forgot. But she's the only one that people kind of come after with nooses and torches over that kind of stuff.
8:31 is the time, 42 degrees, AM 650, KGAB Radio. My name's Glenn Woods. Thanks for joining me. Sitting in the studio with me is Mr. Hutchings. We're talking about the whole Lynn Hutchings controversy, which we have to give a different name. So her name's not attached to it anymore, as far as I'm concerned. So I'll try for something that accuses, because I would like, if anyone needs to apologize, my opinion first, anyone needs to apologize, it's not her.
No,
I mean, it would be Wyoming Equality for falsely accusing. Now, if you have any questions for Mr. Hutchings, 632-6500 or 888-503-6500. They're already coming in. Grab your headphones there.
All right. We can call it the Wyoming Equality Fiasco.
Yeah, we can do that. All right. This is Glenn. Who's on the phone?
Hi, this is John. It's funny. I didn't realize that the reason there was the problem was because there weren't any definitions on the sexual equality thing. That never came out in the paper, oddly enough. But my question is, if that bill passed, would that protect a pedophile from being fired from a daycare center, a nursery, or school, or prevent the school district or a school from hiring one under the sexual protection thing?
That's a good. Let me answer that real quick. Thanks for calling in. I think the answer would be that was exactly what the point Lynn was trying to make. That the language in there, the way it was written or is written, is vague enough that there could be an unintended consequence there. Okay. This is Glenn, who's on the phone.
Morning, Glenn. This is Chris.
Yes, sir.
Cheyenne. Yeah, first I'd like to apologize to Mr. Hutchins and Lynn for having to endure the idiocy of people. But I'd also encourage him to perhaps set up a GoFundMe account and go after Wyoming equality. I mean, we have to do something about forcing these people to be honest and truthful. And when you have these people twisting their words and then causing these phone calls and these threats and the other things, those things have to stop. So I would also encourage any attorneys out there listening to contact them and offer their services pro bono. And let's see what we can do to end this stuff. I would also call for Senator Burlingame's resignation. I mean, she incited this hatefulness, and she needs to be held accountable for it.
All right. Thanks for calling. That last part, to me, is what's most interesting about it, because I was asking for an apology, but why not ask for her resignation if she incited this whole thing? Mm-hmm. And let me ask you, as far as the calls, we have the stacks of emails and calls, and I'll go through it later with the listeners so they know what you've been getting here. Are there repeat offenders, people who just keep calling back to, the same people over and over and over again?
Yes, I've written down some of the phone numbers, and it's like, oh, it's him again.
Yeah.
And some of them don't leave messages. Some just call. You can see by the time and date stamp.
Sure.
Some of them called in the middle of the night, just trying to wake you up or harass you and go through that. So that's kind of interesting, just studying the kind of human behavior and the patterns that people have. So.
Okay, to the callers on hold, hang on, getting to you one more question here. And when you take a look at these callers and the emails, how many are from within the state of Wyoming? And there are some from outside of the state of Wyoming?
Oh, yes. They went, they're trying to go global on this. Yeah. We've had all over the country, from East Coast, West Coast, North, South, overseas even.
Wow.
We even have people calling and calling in nastygrams from that. So it's a variety of area codes.
All right.
Here.
And everywhere.
And everywhere.
This is Glenn who's on the phone.
Hi, this is Nancy.
Yes, ma'am.
Say, in my opinion, what's been done to Lynn Hutchings is absolutely despicable. And God bless her. Goodbye.
Okay. Thanks for calling. Appreciate it. This is Glenn who's on the phone.
This is Kent.
Yes, sir.
I just don't understand why this even comes up. Our state constitution, Section 2, says equality for all in their inherent right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. All members of the human race are equal. And if they got a problem past that, it becomes a legal matter, and we don't need to pass a new law for our constitution, do we? I don't understand this.
Okay, and that's a question that we've had before. Is it already on the books? You know, and that's a question I'd love to sit down and talk to Lynn about, especially. Is this already on the books? Do we already have these kind of protections in the state of Wyoming? Let's jump back to the next phone call. This is Glenn. Who's on with us?
Hi, Glenn. This is Maureen from Cheyenne.
Yes, ma'am.
And I wanted to clarify what Mr. Hutchings said. And good morning, Mr. Hutchings.
Morning.
You and your wife are just angels as far as I'm concerned.
Hey, thanks. That's one person.
Because there were no definitions, that was my husband that called in. Does that mean that if we pass this, that all people would be protected, whether they were pedophiles or if they were all part of that group? Do you understand what I'm asking?
Yes, I do understand, and I can't I can't really speak to that and say, but that was our concern because it was so broad and sweeping, and they couldn't or wouldn't define it. So that's why we were concerned about it. Now, how the legal community would want to handle that, I have no idea. You know, you still, if it's on the books, if this bill passed, of course, there'll be people wanting to enforce the letter of the law, which makes sense. And the letter of the law pretty much would cover anybody, and it says sexual orientation, and it was pretty much all sexual orientations and whatever they may decide thereafter in gender identities.
Okay, all sexual orientation, no limits whatsoever. Again, I think that was Lynn's point in this. This is Glenn, who's on the phone.
Yeah, this is Steve.
Yes, sir.
From Albany County. Mr. Hutchings, I've met you before, and I've met your wife on several occasions, and I have to say she is one of the most good-hearted women I have ever met. And I really, really sympathize with you over this.
Hey, thanks.
And the other thing is, some years ago, there was a big to-do up in Canada, and they passed a law that it was illegal. You could go to jail for saying anything bad about any sexual orientation. At that point, it was noted that pedophilia is a sexual orientation. We wonder where on earth that was going to go because it was headed that way in this country as well. And the American Psychological Association, way back then, this is 10 or 15 years ago, normalized pedophilia. In other words, said it is no longer abnormal. Now, that's scary. So I understand what she was doing.
Okay. Thanks for your call. I appreciate it. And by the way, those who want to jump in, 632-6500 is the phone number.
And what was odd was Lynn never brought up those words. She never said those words. And like I said, she never compared them. She just was asking kids, the students about that. So she never said those words. They created those words. They made that and tried to frame that as an argument.
This is Glenn, who's on the phone.
Hi, this is Frank from Cheyenne.
Yes, sir.
My question is I met Lynn once down by our local mailbox here. She's a great lady. Why is she being targeted? And these groups just don't, just pick out somebody, at random. What is she doing to get these groups so upset with her that they're targeting her?
And you brought that, thanks for the call. You brought that up earlier because it was in the house, and they didn't go after anyone in the house, but they specifically asked her to come out and talk to her. Why?
Right. Also, they didn't even speak to the House reps within Senate 5.
Yeah.
So that school, Central High School, I think it's in House District 8, they never spoke to Representative Nicholas. They never spoke to Representative Blackburn. It's also in Senate District 5. So that's pretty odd. But we think one thing is Lynn is a very straight shooter. She's honest. She tells the truth. She doesn't mince words. She doesn't, make up stuff. She's very honest. And like I said, and I don't know if you know Candace Owen, but the Democrat Party and some of these other groups pull the same thing on her. And when she wouldn't agree with stuff and go their way, they launched this, again, a racist attack with all these emails and phone calls and this kind of stuff at her. So, and she's very vocal. And so one thing these groups, they like to, I guess you can call it Shanghai, other groups. And one thing they cannot stand is a black Republican, someone that speaks out against it. And we've gotten these phone calls, too, about, hey, how dare you be a Republican? You should be voting Democrat based on your race and everything. That's like going to a dinner and saying, here, you've got to eat this watermelon. You've got to eat this watermelon. So that's that ticks me off more than anything is you have to vote, be the plantation guy and vote Democrat. And so they don't like that, and we won't put up with it. And like I said, people are calling for her resignation. It's like, no, like you said the other day, Lynn's not going anywhere. We don't quit. So they're not going to get us to quit. And what the sad thing about this also is you have the Clarence Thomases, the Herman Cains, and now you have Lynn. And a lot of times they use that sexual deviant while, they said Lynn was screaming and jumping up and down. And that's what people think when they call the house and leave their profanity-laced messages. So they're trying to paint that picture. And this reminds me of last night. I was thinking, this kind of reminds me of To Kill a Mockingbird. The people with their nooses. I can see the seersucker suits and smell the sweat and tobacco. It just reminds me of that movie. But there's no Atticus Finch, Gregory Peck, except for you, Glenn.
I appreciate that. This is Glenn who's on the phone.
Well, you're going to have to find me, but why does nobody answer my question when our state constitution says everybody is equal? Why do we have to have a special law? Why do they have to have something special sewn on there when everything's already covered and they're spending all this time taking up all this time?
Here, I'll give you an answer. You do have to pay the $10 to the charity, but I'll give you an answer as to where you look for that. And that would be call Sarah Burlingame and see what kind of answer you get. I'd love to know the answer to that. Thanks for calling in.
I'd like to speak to him.
Sure.
I totally agree with him. All the protections already in there. No one's stopping anyone from voting, going to the grocery store, getting on an airplane, or doing whatever. So he is totally correct. Okay. I agree with him.
This is Glenn, who's on the phone.
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Hutchins.
Morning.
Glenn.
Morning.
I think that a lot of things going to go on here, but I think a little bit more deeper examination on that. First, I applaud her for even giving her explanation in first person, which is brave in itself. But what were those students able to leave campus to do that, especially for the subject matter? I mean, these kids don't have nothing to know about anatomy. They're not going to be doctors or anything like this. Why were they allowed to even leave the campus to do this under that kind of subject matter? Two, was all the standard operating procedures from that high school followed? I, as a parent, because of the subject matter, would have never given permission for my child to even go up there. I mean, that's a subject matter, that's an adult matter to be handled at an adult level. I mean, it just befoogles my mind. And the way she handled it, I thought she handled it with finesse in how she did that. And then how this group, which any group is going to go out there, they're going to use whatever method they can because that's what they're paid to do or lobby to do or however they do it. But at the second point is, if it was that disturbing and everything, there must be a failure in our education system at the school district. The school district is supposed to ensure that our children are signed for and the parents understand all aspects of what's going on when they go on that field trip, because you got transportation liabilities. I mean, you know, somebody could have gotten hurt. Somebody could have gotten injured. The thing is why were they there to begin with?
All right. Thanks for calling in. I appreciate it. I just got a note from up in Gillette, Wyoming, informing me that I am not Atticus Finch or Gregory Peck, so I shouldn't get a big head about it. Those who would like to call in, there's one caller on hold now. 632-6500 is the phone number. More in a moment.
Wyoming's most accurate weather at the top and bottom of each hour from day weather on AM 650, KGAB, KGAB.com, and on the go with Radio Pump.
847, 43 degrees, AM 650, KGAB Radio. My name is Glenn Woods. Mr. Hutchins, husband of Lynn Hutchings, is in the studio with me taking your phone calls. Now, first caller was hanging on before the commercial break started, so I'll go to you first. This is Glenn. Who's on the phone?
Oh, this is Joe in Laramie.
Yes,
Morning,
sir.
Tom.
Morning, sir. How you doing? Good to hear you.
Doing good. It's good to hear Lynn's hanging in there. I disagree with you, Glenn. They are the same as the KKK because back then they got away with what they could, which then hanging a Republican, who most of were black, was you could get away with. And now they can do these type of harassment. They can get away with it. It's just a matter of degree. It's the same exact tactic. If they could start killing us and getting away with it, I mean, they do violence at Trump rallies and other types of conservative events, and they get away with it. If you were to even use the vile language against them, you'd be prosecuted. I think they're exactly the same. I've known Lynn and Tom now for a number of years, sweetheart people, and anybody who pays attention to this equality group or any of these Democrat politicians in this state or any state is really just got their head in a dark place, very, very dark place. So good luck to you and Lynn. Hang in there. You got plenty of supporters. And if a GoFundMe thing pops up, I will be sending a check.
Hey, thanks. Appreciate it.
Appreciate your call. Back to the phones. This is Glenn. Who's on with us?
Good morning, Glenn and Mr. Hutchins. This is Judy from Cheyenne.
Hey.
I just think it's honorable that you have come on to represent your wife in the capacity that you are as her campaign manager. One thing that is troubling to me is how this bill ever got out of the Legislative Service Office via the attorneys or via the attorneys with no definition on the word or the word. Do you have any idea how that happened?
Well, I guess I'm not an expert on this, but I think sometimes the LSO will possibly say whether they think it's unconstitutional or changes that maybe should be made, but still the legislator, the sponsor of the bill, has a say also. I'm not sure what went on in this instance.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Well, the other go ahead.
Well, I was just going to toss in. I would think that if during the course of the hearing somebody points out, this is really broad, how are we defining it? And nobody could define it. Then they would want to pull it back to do that and reintroduce the bill.
But 5 out of the 9 people voted for it, even after those people kept saying, "Hey, there are no definitions. What is this? What is this? What is this?" And like I said, Burlingame and Representative Burlingame and Representative Zwanitzer, both sponsors of the bill, both voted for it. And again, like I said, Representative Burlingame is on executive director of the Wyoming Equality, and she had a vote on it, and she was a sponsor on it. So it sounds kind of rigged.
Were those the only 2 sponsors on that bill?
Oh no, it had Representative Lindholm was a sponsor of it. Let's see.
Okay, that's okay. I mean, if you want to go ahead and
But did you have another point that you wanted to make?
I did. Thank you, Glenn. My other, I'm just amazed. Is this sexual alliance, whatever the gay sexual alliance, is that a class in school or is that an organization?
I think it's an organization. I think it's like a club. But again, this club was started by Wyoming Equality. So it's this activist group that starts an arm in our schools, and now they've trained these kids and they use them as human shields, and they weaponize these students pretty much to go down to the legislature and do these types of things. And this is not the first time they've done this. They've done this before. Sarah Burlingame herself has taken kids down there to harass legislators.
So they're taking school time that taxpayers are paying for them to be in school to go do this, and not on their personal time.
Yes.
That is the correct statement?
Yes. From what I understand, they were taken out of school for this. This was during the middle of the day, if I remember correctly.
Well, number one, they can't vote. I do appreciate their voice. However, the parents should be appalled at the school district and should be breathing down administrators' backs to stop this kind of stuff. I am just appalled. And did they have signed releases to be out of class? I would love to know all of that as a taxpayer.
Okay, great points. Thanks. I appreciate it. This is Glenn, who's on the phone.
Hey, Glenn, Joe, Cheyenne.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Tom, Joe, and Jackie.
Hey there. How you doing?
Well, she says I'm better than nothing. So, this is the tolerant left. Saul Alinsky is alive and well. They use that on a daily basis. Lie, deny, and vilify, accuse others of what you are doing, change the language, whatever they got to do. I mean, the end justifies the means. You all have nothing to apologize for. Most of us with a third grade education know that. And, so these guys, and whatever advances they make, people want to vilify you for saying this, but, NAMBLA is waiting in the wings. Every time they make an advance, NAMBLA, you know who NAMBLA is.
Yes, I do.
They're waiting in the wings. And like the guy, 2 callers ago said, there are psychiatrists that are normalizing this. This is what's frightening.
All right. Thanks for your call. I appreciate it. This is Glenn, who's on the phone.
Hi, this is Adri.
Yes.
First, I want to say that I have met both Lynn and her husband, and I'm very impressed with the two of them. Also, it was a setup. I'm a former high school teacher. I know that this was a setup. There's no question about that. And it makes me sick to think that we are using our students that way. And the second thing I want to mention is that I do think we need to be careful in this state. I don't know if either of you read in the paper a couple days ago that the state legislature in Colorado is one of the bills before their legislature is to be able to change your birth certificate to say what you feel you really are.
Okay. Well, again, no definition, just whatever you think you want to be. Just go ahead and put it down. This is Glenn, who's on the phone.
Yes, this is Jack from Cheyenne.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, when you were on vacation, Sarah was in there, and she was talking to Doug, and it was she was rather aloof and rather self-centered and everything, with people calling in and didn't want to answer questions. And so I think the vagueness in this bill is intentional in order to trap people like Sarah, who are just trying to get a definition and get an actual reasonable sense of what's trying to be accomplished, so they can trap them and so they can bash them with all this stuff. All right, thank you.
All right, thanks for calling in. And just so you know, just because I play things even like this, I did put out to Wyoming Equality. I've been talking about them, but I've had you on. Mm-hmm. So Sarah Burlingame's welcome to come in and set the microphone, and I'll just ask questions and let her make her case and let the chips fall wherever they may.
Fair.
And let's say, well, that's what I'm trying to be, is fair. Unlike some of the other media organizations in Wyoming. This is Glenn, who's on the phone.
Yeah, this is Paul.
Yes, sir.
From the county. I just got a comment here. There's some people that they are the most vile and evil people on the face of the earth. This Burlingame's organization. I had to make that clear, just who I'm talking about.
Yeah. Quickly, please.
But no, it's. I'll say this much, and I'll say it to their face. They set up my foot on my property. I'll have them arrested for trespassing.
Okay, thanks for calling in. So from here, any legal action? What does she do?
We're just looking to see how things are going,
okay.
And we'll make that decision later. We've considered it. What's really sad is the effect this is having on the businesses and tourism Is CFD going to be boycotted next year, or
Yeah.
are they going to protest it? Yeah, and it's even hit our family. Our grandson wanted to use Lynn as a for Black History Month, and you can't do that
Couldn't do
because
it.
he'll be harassed.
All right.